مرحبا كمان مرة بالجميع. شكرا لانضمامكم لجلستنا اليوم اللي هي في عنا ضيفة مميزة سيرين عاصي. رح نحكي عن إيش هي المتطلبات لحتى تدرسوا الدراسات العليا، ممكن ماجستير أو الدكتوراه في أمريكا. طبعا سيرين هي حاليا طالبة دكتوراه بجامعة بنسلفانيا University of Pennsylvania، واليوم رح تحكي لكم أكثر هي عن تجربتها، كيف حضرت حالها، وكمان إيش هي عملت لحتى توصل لهاي المرحلة. بس قبل ما نعطي المجال لسيرين، أنا اسمي مروة، خليني أعرف عن حالي. وزميلتي سناء، إحنا بنشتغل في فريق الأديوكيشن USA بمكتب الأميد إيست في البيرة. ورح نحكي لكم شوي بس عن مين إحنا كأديوكيشن USA، إيش خدماتنا، وكمان بشكل عام عن الدراسات العليا بأمريكا. إحنا Education USA عبارة عن مراكز استشارة بأكثر من 175 دولة حوالين العالم. طبعا إحنا تابعين لوزارة الخارجية الأمريكية. هدفنا إنه نساعد الأشخاص المعنيين يكملوا دراستهم الأكاديمية في أمريكا، سواء ممكن كان لدرجة البكالوريوس، ممكن للماجستير، دكتوراه، أو مثلا برامج اللغة الإنجليزية، أو ممكن برامج قصيرة. فإحنا بيكون في عنا المصادر والخطوات اللي أنتم لازم تتبعوها لحتى تقدروا توصلوا للهدف تبعكم. طبعا إحنا الخدمات تبعتنا اللي بنقدمها مجانية، بتتنوع عادة بشكل عام. يعني بيكون في عنا جلسات عن الدراسة بأمريكا، عن الخمس خطوات. بيكون في عنا جلسات بتتعلق بمواضيع مختلفة، مثلا مثل كتابة المقالات، أو كيف تبحثوا عن فرص المنح والمساعدات المالية. كمان بيكون في عنا زيارات لجامعات ومدارس هون في البلد، أو ممكن للأمريكان سبيسز، أو لبعض المراكز اللي موجودة هون. كمان بالسنوات اللي قبل كان في عنا فرص لحتى نستضيف مندوبين من جامعات وكليات أمريكية، وهدول المندوبين عادة بيكونوا بدهم يتعرفوا على طلاب معنيين يقدموا على جامعاتهم بأمريكا. طبعا بسبب الوضع القائم اللي له تقريبا سنتين، احنا عم نشتغل كله هلا اونلاين. كل الادفايزنج سيرفيسز عم نقدمها بتكون فيرتشوال. فكل شغلنا زي مثلا جلسة اليوم بيكون اونلاين عبر جلسات الزوم. طبعا احنا كل هاي الجلسات بنعلن عنها على مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي تبعنا، وكمان نبعتها على الايميلز اللي بتكون موجودة عندنا، ورح نحط لكم الكونتاكت انفورميشن تبعتنا كمان شوي. الموقع الأساسي اللي ممكن أول إشي لازم تروحوا عليه اللي هو موقع Education USA. زي ما أنتم شايفين educationusa.state.gov. على هذا الموقع رح تلاقوا معلومات معتمدة وتفصيلية عن الدراسة بأمريكا. الحلو بالموقع إنه فيه قسم خاص كمان بيحكي لكم عن المساعدات والمنح الدراسية اللي ممكن أنتم تقدموا لها. لكثير من الجامعات بتحب تشارك هاي المعلومات على الموقع الرسمي تبعنا. الخمس خطوات للدراسة بأمريكا زي ما أنتم شايفينها هي لأي شخص حابب يكمل التعليم تبعه بأمريكا. الخطوة الأولى اللي هي البحث عن الخيارات research your options، عشان تعرفوا أنه من جامعات أو كليات أمريكية لازم تروحوا عليها لحتى تعرفوا المتطلبات. الخطوة الثانية finance your studies، كيف تمولوا دراسة بأمريكا، قديش التكلفة رح تكون، إيش فرص المنح والمساعدات المالية. الخطوة الثالثة complete your application، بدكم تشتغلوا على الطلب والمتطلبات اللي انتم لازم تكون معكم لحتى تقدموا على برنامج معين، اللي كمان شوي سناء رح تحكي أكثر عن المتطلبات للgraduate studies. كمان في عنا الخطوة الرابعة apply for your student visa، إشي طبيعي كطلاب دوليين. بدكم تدخلوا بهاي الإجراءات طبعا بعد ما يصح لكم قبول من جامعة. والخطوة الخامسة والأخيرة prepare for your departure، هي التحضير ما قبل المغادرة. أكيد بيكون في بعض الأمور اللي بدكم تنهوها هون ممكن بالبلد أو مع الجامعة اللي بدكم تروحوا تدرسوا فيها قبل ما توصلوا أمريكا. طبعا هذه المعلومات رح تلاقوها على الموقع الرسمي بشكل تفصيلي تفصيلي ومقسمة حسب الليفل اوف ستدي أو الليفل اوف يعني الدراسة اللي انتم حابين تقدموا عليها. ممكن مثلا community colleges أو عندكم undergraduate اللي هم عادة بكالوريوس، الجراduate اللي هو ماجستير أو دكتوراه، في عندكم الشورت تيرم اللي هم البرامج القصيرة أو الانجليش لانجويج برامج اللغة الإنجليزية، وكمان الاونلاين ليرنينج اللي هم البرامج اللي بتكون افتراضية اونلاين. فرح تلاقوا معلومات تفصيلية، وهنا بس مثال يعني كيف ستيب 1 اللي هو البحث عن الخطوات، البحث عن الجامعات، بيكون في معلومات تفصيلية عن كل خطوة. هنا تقدروا تتابعونا على صفحتنا على الفيسبوك، على الانستغرام، تويتر، وكمان في عنا صفحة على اليوتيوب. عادة بنحط كل الايفنتس، كل الجلسات اللي احنا بنعملها على موقعنا خصوصي الفيسبوك Education USA West Bank، فبتقدروا هناك تعملوا لنا فولو وتشوفوا كل الاشياء اللي ممكن تكون موجودة لقدام. بنفس الوقت اذا عندكم اي سؤال، اي استفسار، او حابين نبعث لكم مواقع معينة، او ممكن بدكم individual consultation، تقدروا تراسلونا على الايميل اللي انتم شايفينه تحت على الشاشة ramallah@educationusa.org. هلا رح أعطي لزميلتي سناء لحتى هي تكمل بالبرزنتيشن.
شكرا مروة، وشكرا للكل اللي انضموا لنا اليوم، وشكرا لسيرين اللي عندها نهارها صباحي، فشكرا كثير لوجودك معنا. طبعا ممكن يعني نقدم معلومات عن شو الايجابيات او الادفانتجز للدراسه بامريكا بشكل عام، ولكن اللي ما عنده اي خلفيه، طبعا عشان في عده جامعات، يعني تحديدا اكثر من 4000 جامعه في امريكا معتمده، فطبعا الخيارات رح تكون كثيره. اللي بيميز هاي كثير من هاي الجامعات انه تركيز على التفكير النقدي او critical thinking، التركيز على الهاندز اون سكيلز، يعني الفرص للتواصل والعمل بالبرامج اللي انتم مسجلين له، حتى بالريسيرش بمراحل اللي مبتدئه بالدراسات في امريكا، بالاندرجراديويت ستدي، وحتى بالكوميونتي كولجز، الجامعات السنتين، الخيارات وعديده. كليات السنتين ممكن الواحد يبلش بدراسه اكاديميه او يبلش بدراسه مهنيه، من ثم يكمل دراساته البكالوريوس ومن ثم الدراسات العليا. فاكيد سيرين راح تعطينا هاي النظره او هاي التجربه المميزه تاعتها، كيف بلشت بدراسه اول 4 سنوات وكيف وصلت للمرحله اللي هي حاليا فيها، اللي هي الدراسات العليا بالPhD programs. العمل مع البروفيسورز كمان كثير مهمة. في فرص للطالب يتواصل مع الكادر التعليمي، ومش بس بحيث الإرشاد الأكاديمي، ولكن ممكن بروفيسورز إرشاد، بالإضافة للإرشاد يكون في عمل من خلال المختبرات أو الأبحاث. الفاسيلتيز، الفرص هاي الابحاث وهاي الريسيرش، وكمان الفاسيلتيز، المكاتب العالميه تصنيفها بكون عالمي، الفرص لتعرف على كل هاي الستيت اوف ذا ارت ريسورسز، المصادر من حيث المصادر العلميه والغير علميه متوفره بمعظم الجامعات الامريكيه. طبعا لا شك اللغه الانجليزيه لاي شخص بده يدرس بامريكا راح تتطور بشكل ملموس. كل الدراسه بتكون بالانجليزي، فاكيد الشخص اللي ممكن يكون لغته الانجليزيه بالكتابه او بالقراءه ممتازه، ولكن بس يوصل للجامعات الامريكيه ممارسه اللغه راح تكون مطلوبه. فالكونفرسيشن، الكوميونيكيشن سكيلز تاعون الطلاب راح تتحسن بشكل كبير. فهاي بعض الايجابيات اللي احنا بنذكرها لكم، بالاضافه للتخصصات. يعني عديد من التخصصات متوفرة، وهاي التخصصات ممكن إحنا ما نلاقيها بجامعاتنا في البلد. ففي كتير من طلابنا بيبحثوا عن تخصصات اللي مش متوفرة في الجامعات الفلسطينية، فهاي بتكون فرصة لهم ليقدموا للجامعات الأمريكية. Next slide please. زي ما أنا حكيت أكثر من 4000 جامعة، من ضمن هاي 4000 جامعة في تقريباً 1900 برامج ماجستير ودكتوراه موجود بالجامعات الأمريكية بالتخصصات المختلفة، وممكن الواحد يكمل تخصص أكاديمي أو تخصص مهني professional، ورح نحكي عنها كمان شوي. وكمان طبعاً ال Ph.D programs and other doctoral programs اللي أكيد سيرين رح تركز عليها. Next slide please. فهون بس صورة نبذة بسيطة عن الماسترز بروجرامز اللي ممكن يكون هاي الماسترز بروجرامز أكاديميك أو بروفيشنال. والأكاديميك ممكن هاي توصل الشخص يكمل للبي اتش دي. البروفيشنال ماسترز ممكن ينهي بعد ما يخلص أول سنة أو سنتين أو حتى 3 سنين حسب التخصص اللي المعني فيه. وممكن هاي البروفيشنال ماسترز تعتبر terminal degree، أو هاي أعلى درجة من الشهادة لبعض التخصصات. وفي تخصصات كثيرة ممكن واحد يكمل للدكتوراه. فهاي بس نبذة بسيطة، ورح نعطي كمان مجال لسيرين لتعطينا فكرة كيف هي وصلت للبي اتش دي بروجرام من الباچلرز بروجرام. and so تعطينا فكرة كمان الخيارات كيف ممكن واحد يحصل على بي اتش دي بدون ما يكون فعليا محصل على ماسترز ديجري بروجرام. Next slide. وهي الدكتورال بروجرامز طبعا PhD programs من كل التخصصات متوفرة، وبتتراوح بين 3 ل 8 سنوات لدراسة. وهي دراسة بتكون بين course work محاضرات، بين research، وبين كمان امتحان comprehensive امتحان لينهي مرحلة الدكتوراه. وطبعا زي ما أنا حكيت قبل هيك في doctoral programs ممكن الشخص يكمل إلها بعد البكالوريوس بعد أول 4 سنوات. وتحديدا هاي البروجرامز بتكون بالمجالات الستيم fields، science, technology and engineering and math fields. Next slide please. فبشكل سريع بغض النظر ايش التخصص اللي انتم معنيين تفكروا فيه للدراسه بامريكا، في متطلبات عامه راح تكون مطلوبه لتقديم لهي الجامعات. وثائق طبعا بتتراوح بين الطلب نفسه، شهاداتكم الجامعيه، طبعا كل شيء بده يتقدم باللغه الانجليزيه. فاذا الترانسكريبتس او الكشف علاماتكم باللغه العربيه بدكم تترجموها وتكون الجامعه تقدر تبعتها للجامعه اللي رح تقدموا لها. في رح يكون امتحانات، في امتحانات خاصه للغه الانجليزيه زي التوفل، ايلتس او دولينجو. وفي امتحانات خاصه بالجراجويت ستدي اللي هي GRE بشكل عام او جيمات. GRE لكل التخصصات ما عدا بزنس و administration. هلا كمان راح يكون في لبعض التخصصات امتحانات ثانيه للقانون، ممكن يكون في GRE subject exams لبعض التخصصات. فبس هاي هي الامتحانات اللي عاده راح تكون مطلوبه. وكيف بدكم تعرفوا ايش المطلوب منكم؟ كل موقع للجامعه بيكون محدد ايش الامتحانات اللي راح تكون مطلوبه، ايش الريكوايرد، وايش ممكن يكون optional. بفترة الكورونا كثير من الجامعات عفوا الطالب يقدم الGRE أو الجيمات عشان كان في صعوبة لتحصيل ليوصل الشخص ليقدم هاي الامتحانات. كمان للإنجليش لانجويج كان في كثير مشاكل بوصول الطلاب لتستنج سنترز لمراكز الامتحانات. ففي امتحان اسمه دولينجو، هذا الامتحان الشخص ممكن يقدمه ببيته، وفي شروط لتقديم هيك نوع من الامتحان. رسائل توصية، طبعا تحديد عدد الرسائل بتكون من خلال الجامعة نفسها. statement of purpose هاي مقالة بتكون عادة الجامعة بتحدد إيش المعلومات اللي حابة تشوفها بهاي ال statement of purpose. ممكن تكون معلومات عامة أو ممكن تكون معلومات خاصة بالجامعة نفسها. السي في أو ريزومي في جامعات بيطلبوا سيرة ذاتية، فبتكون هاي السيرة الذاتية مطلوبة. فكمان بيكون في ورشات عمل، وكمان بيكون في معلومات كيف الواحد يقدم السيرة الذاتية اللي تكون مناسبة للتخصص اللي انتم معنيين فيه. work experience فرص عمل أو خبرة عمل. في بعض التخصصات في شرط لا يكون في عمل قبل تقديم الطلب. في بعض المنح كمثل الفولبرايت بروجرام اللي احنا بنديرها بأميديست، وهاي الفولبرايت سكولرشيب بروجرام لتقديم سكولرشيب لفلسطينيين لفترة 2 دراسة بأمريكا، وبطلبوا يكون في عمل سنة وقت تقديم الطلب. فاللي بده يعرف أكثر عن هاي المنحة إحنا كمان ممكن نوفر لكم معلومات كيف تواصلوا. وهاي المنحة كل سنة بتنزل، وبنتوقع إنه تنزل هاي المنحة للسايكل 2023 تكون بين شهر 2 شهر 1 أو شهر 2 من هاي السنة. و proof of financial capability هاي بتكون الوثائق المالية البنكية. ممكن يكون في كمان document خاصة للجامعة لازم تتعبى من خلال البنك. فهاي بعض العناصر الابلكيشن باكج اللي ممكن يوم تفتشوا على جامعات تشوفوا كل هاي العناصر المطلوبة، ويمكن يكون وثائق أخرى ممكن تكون مطلوبة حسب التخصص وحسب الدائرة اللي أنتم رايحين تقدموا لها للنظر بالقبول. Next slide. So now I would like to, without further ado, introduce Sereen Assi. وإن شاء الله يكون جلسة كتير engaging مثمرة، وأكيد راح يكون في لنا فرصة لنجاوب على أسئلتكم أنا ومروة وكمان سرين بعد انتهاء بتقديم معلومات عن تجربتها بدراسة بأمريكا. شكرا سرين.
Thank you, Sana. Hi everyone, my name is Sereen. I grew up in Ramallah, and I went to Ramallah Secondary Girls School. I was born and I grew up in Ramallah, and then during high school I was in some Amidist programs and basically applied for scholarships that would prepare students to go to school in the United States. And that's how I ended up getting accepted to the University of Rochester back in 2017. At the University of Rochester, I basically played around with majors. I tried 3 different majors, and then I really liked biomedical engineering and I stuck with it. I somehow also ended up doing some research and I loved it, which basically led into me applying for Ph.D. programs at different universities around the States. And I ended up deciding to stay with the university, to go to the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm a first-year Ph.D. student now. Can we do the next slide? So this is a general overview of life in the United States as a graduate student. There is some social life to it. There always needs to be a social, a work-life balance where you split your time between academic coursework, your research in the lab, and then whatever you do outside. What made it a lot more fun is basically mixing your social life with your academic life. So competitions, conferences, industry mixers were great ways for me to meet people with the same interests in a non-academic scope, and basically talking to them about our diverse experiences. And it's a great way to bond and network with people in the field. And basically, I always have the advice to people that they should diversify their circles. It's always a great way for you to find new opportunities, because you get to you get to meet people from different perspectives, people with different goals, and also people from different backgrounds. On one hand, it makes you like a very flexible human being who can work with anyone. On the other, it introduces you to things that you didn't know about before. And that's basically how I ended up in graduate school. It was basically me interacting with people who were interested in different things. And I ended up picking the thing that suited my personality best. As for cultural encounters, I would say that the US is a melting pot for cultures. You're gonna meet people from all over the place here. I've met people from countries that I've never even heard of before. So yeah, what basically helped me a lot along the way is learning from everyone around me. And there is so much to the world than what we have experienced. People basically in graduate school, it doesn't really matter where you're from. What matters the most is the quality of your research. And that's, to me, like as someone who came from Palestine, it's basically one of the reasons I love graduate school and I love science. It's just about your effort, whatever you put in the science and your passion towards your research subject. And also like learning a new language is always a great extracurricular activity. I personally found it like really fun, first of all, and also like a great way to keep my brain working while not focusing on the science or whatever your graduate school topic would be. Next slide. So as for civic engagement, I ended up doing a lot of it, mainly because my group is also very interested in civic engagement. It is a great way for you to learn about your community. I came to the States with a very narrow mindset of like what the state has, what people in the States were like, but you'd be surprised to find out like that, like aside from the prestigious academic environment, you will be surprised to find that there's a lot of like academic insecurity in a lot of places. So working with my educators, my mentors, we have a lot of programs that basically target people from undeserving communities. It is a great way for us to share the privilege that we have and basically interact with people, know what our society needs. So it was a great way for us to like share our experiences, our education. A lot of us in academia, we come from all different sorts of backgrounds. Some of us were rich, some of us were born to parents who were already professors, and others basically come from refugee camps. So there's always this diversity in experiences that is always good to share with students who are still young. And you also learn a lot from your community. It is great that we get the chance to get a lot of academic training, but also learning, you also learn a lot whenever you interact with students from outside your academic environment. As for professional networking, your circle is what matters most. I've known people with all the amazing qualifications who couldn't really get to the places they wanted to get just because they didn't know the right people. So always whenever you interact with people in graduate school, just make sure that whoever you interact with also has some connection to whatever you want to do in the future, because it can go a long way. When you're trying to get this job, when you're trying to get this PhD student position, someone's gonna ask your previous mentors about you. And if they know your previous mentors and they know that your previous mentors were good, their word is gonna amount to a lot. And that's basically what happened with me. I had a previous undergraduate research mentor who was very well known in the field of tissue engineering. And that basically led to me getting to know some of his colleagues in the work at the University of Pennsylvania. With our matching goals and interests, it seemed like they were a really good match. He recommended me, and that was basically it. People don't really look at your grades sometimes as much as they look at your references. So my recommendation is reaching out to people, no matter what. Don't be shy, email someone, talk to them about the research. What matters the most is like your passion towards what you do and what you like. Talking through your goals and interests is always very helpful for you to narrow your options, find out about things that are correlated with what you want that you wouldn't have thought about because you're still new to the field. Those mentors will basically like guide you towards these different fields. And I found it helpful along the way when I was applying. Participating in classes and student organizations was also a great way to basically learn about different topics that you would somehow be interested in, or like different industries. It helps you narrow down your interests, and it looks really attractive in your application when you look like you know what you want to do. Next. So for qualifications, yeah, I added a slide just to like briefly talk about what helped me along the way. As for research experience, I did some undergraduate research at the University of Rochester. And if you're coming from an international school, I don't think this is a reason for you to worry too much, because I realized that a lot of the lab skills that people from international schools, international universities learn are essentially what we do in undergraduate research here in the States. Sometimes it is very brief involvement. When I was in undergraduate research in the first lab that I worked at, I only worked in preparing the animals for experiments for other graduate students to work on. But just you being in the environment and just you interacting with Ph.D. students on one hand, master's students on another, and basically the research advisors exposes you to the community. So if you're in a university anywhere, so let's say if you're in the West Bank in a university, I recommend you talk to research faculty. They'll definitely have connections somewhere outside. They can connect you with them. Biomedical research, I also did biomedical research that is similar to my PhD work. Very early on in my undergrad degree, when I was doing my bachelor's, I looked at different things that I can do with my bachelor's, and I saw this like very prestigious research that is going on joints and tendons and cartilage and bone, and basically tissue engineering methods to make these to make joints perform better. So I ended up in labs that did this work. Most of the labs that I did work at were mainly doing some tendon work, which is basically the ligaments that connect your bones. It exposed me to the field and made me get to know professors who are also very well known in it. And that led to me doing specifically what I want to do in graduate school. My study abroad research experience was also super interesting. I worked in the same field, but it was done on kangaroo tissue. And during my interviews, I just realized that people really liked it. It's kind of cool for you to talk about, because to people from the States, it's different. It shows them that you have some sort of a global experience. And it's just like a good diverse it basically diversifies your experiences when you're looking at your interests. As for like another really important thing that they look for in graduate students is commitment and dedication. It shows through your grades, recommendation letters, and personality when you're interacting with educators. Grades matter, especially for graduate school, but I would say that if your grades are not what you would want them to be, it's still not the end of the world. My grades were definitely not the University of Pennsylvania level, but what basically elevated my application was my recommendation letters, the way I was emailing professors and getting to know people from the field just through my application process. People from different schools were already talking about my application. And that did show that I was highly interested in the field. It did show that I was really committed to the research, and it basically helped build this really good image for me as a future PhD student. And I would say that graduate studies are definitely more demanding than undergraduate work, but commitment and patience will bring you great results. I personally like graduate studies a lot more than my bachelor. I liked graduate school more than my bachelor's degree, just because you basically get to choose what you're spending your time on. In undergraduate degrees, you have to take all these requirements for calculus, physics. So between all these requirements, you sometimes feel like you're not actually learning what you came for. Whereas for graduate studies, you're basically devoting all your time to work on this like really cool project. Sometimes things work out, and most of the time things don't work out. But at the end of the day, there's always a chance for you to get the good results you're looking for, or sometimes results that you've never even assumed that you would get. So it's always a good time if it fits your personality. And I think next, Marwa. Oh yeah, it is a global experience. Over the past 5 years of me being an undergraduate student and then like transferring to graduate school, I really did get to like experience things on all different aspects, culturally, personally, academically. I definitely recommend recommend trying to go somewhere abroad for graduate studies. It does enrich your academic experience, and it basically helps you build up a great personality, someone who's very flexible, someone who's very knowledgeable of everyone else. Those are pictures of me both at the University of Rochester, in Sydney during Christmas, and also that was in the third picture is also in Rochester. Yeah, you basically get to meet a lot of personalities, and you get exposed to kinds of science that you didn't even know existed. I didn't know about biomedical engineering coming into graduate school, and coming into my bachelor's. I didn't know about the field of research that I ended up in, but just the exposure to all this cool science, it can take you places. And I think we're done. Yep.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Hopefully we'll have some questions coming in. We have a question about financial aid schemes available to non-US citizens. Can you kind of elaborate in general about what financial aid opportunities are available for graduate study in the US?
I can jump in and say that if you're looking for a master's, there's a lot of programs that you should look into for masters, because I would say it is harder to get funding for a master's than it is for a PhD, but it's never impossible. There are schools that will offer you subsidized tuition. If you have great grades, you can get scholarships through the school, and you can also pick up a teaching assistant fellowship as well. So you will be working for the school while simultaneously doing your master's. Depending on your financial situation, some schools might offer need-based aid, but it's still more limited for your master's than it could be for your undergrad. As for a PhD program, you're fully funded. You don't have to worry about finances. Some schools will even pay you for your relocation. So basically you moving to the States. It depends on the school. And for the most part, I found my stipend to be enough for me to basically have a good apartment, be able to buy groceries and be comfortable about it, save a tiny bit. It's not like a huge amount of money, but it's still manageable. It's something that we could work with. And it always helps if you end up in a city that is not financially demanding. So Philadelphia, the city that I ended up in, has everything you would want in a city, but it's still not crazy high rent prices.
Thank you, Sereen. I would like to add that you really, especially those who are focusing on, financial assistance during their graduate study, to do their research before they choose to apply to a specific university, because their scholarships or fellowship opportunities may be limited. And based on your qualifications, either you may or may not qualify to apply. Assistantships are also very competitive, and so there'll be there's a process for the application process and for consideration, not only your academic portfolio, but also testing and other components. And so it's very important to contact the university and to learn more about what their opportunities are for financial aid for international students. And of course, there are private funding resources that you can apply to, and we would be happy to share some of those resources with you when we send out an email thanking everyone for joining our session today. So, but really your first source of financial aid, scholarships, fellowships would be through that university that you're considering. And also, as I mentioned earlier, Amethyst does offer a master's scholarship under the Fulbright Student Scholarship program. And so that is something you may want to consider learning more about. And that in itself requires a process that you would need to understand and be committed to. So with that, also, any other questions? Anything else you would like us to elaborate on and would like Sereen? Yes? Someone was unmuted. Okay, how many courses do you have to have in your PhD program? Is it a requirement to publish in journals or not?
So my program is estimated to be anywhere between 4 and 6 years, and I only have to take 9 courses. And I mean, the average for like a normal student in college is like to take 2 to 4 classes a semester. So I'm already, I think, I'm like 5 courses in, and I'm a second semester first year student, so I have like 4 left. It's usually not the focus of your PhD. It's mainly there to supplement what you're looking for. It depends on the school. Some schools will determine your curriculum for you, but the main direction everyone's heading towards is classes are here if you need to learn about this thing you've never heard of. So if you're like a biology student who's doing immunology research, there's always classes for you to take. So you could basically be more aware of like what you're doing, but they're not the focus of what you want to do. Like doing homework and doing exams is no longer the focus of your experience. As for publishing, I don't think any school is also specific about the journals. The prestige of the journal that you publish in is always good for you when you're applying other places. I think most departments do require that you publish, like, I think 2 or 3 papers before you graduate. It depends on the department. As for like, if you're asking if it's a requirement to apply for a PhD, some professors will like having a publication, but no one really expects it unless you've done like really extensive research. Like it would look kind of questionable if you didn't really publish any of it. But I came in as an undergrad. It's very understandable that I focused more on my coursework, and I didn't have any publications, and I ended up fine. Yeah. And the qualifying exam is a thing. It depends on, basically it also depends on the school. Some schools will have you memorize things that are related to the field and like quiz you on it. My school doesn't have it this way, and I think also a lot of schools are heading in the same direction as my school. The University of Pennsylvania bioengineering will give you like a topic, a general, very broad idea, and you have to come up with a research question and formulate a grant. And a grant is basically a scholarship application. We can think of it as a scholarship application where like you can say, oh, I would like to study basically how people with this disease, this neurological disease process sound signals, whatever. And you basically write an entire application giving experiments you want to do, questions you want to ask. And based on that, it's technically your qualifying exam and you have to present on it. Most of the time, if you were good enough to make it to the PhD application, to the PhD program, it's going to be pretty easy for you to pass it. It's just going to be an experience for you to basically brush up on your writing skills and basically improve your academic writing.
Great, thank you for that. Another question is about the transition process from your undergraduate program to your graduate program. How was that like?
It depends on the person, I would also say, but I love transitioning because undergrad feels a lot like a school, especially in the States. The majority, that like the big trend in other countries is, oh, you go to college and then you go home. You don't really have to live on campus. For me, undergrad was basically me living on campus the entire time. I didn't really have to worry about cooking because I had a meal plan and a dining hall. And I lived basically in a campus apartment. I didn't really have to interact with the outside community. It was a bit of a challenge to basically transition into like entirely adult life where basically you're responsible for everything. You have to like basically find a good lease and not get scammed by someone. It was kind of challenging on that level, but it was really nice to just like settle into a life of basically being an adult, deciding what you're gonna eat today, doing things your way. As for academics, I personally really liked it. As I said before, you have just more freedom in choosing what you want to study, and you get to specifically do this one thing, this one subset of this major that you studied in undergrad, and I thought that it was really cool. Sometimes you have to take subjects that are like not too much correlated to what you do, but overall, first of all, professors don't grade as harshly as they do in undergrad. Second of all, your assignments are no longer like very much focused on homeworks and quizzes. They're focused on you coming up with projects, giving presentations on certain topics, and it's a way for you to learn, to broaden your knowledge, even in things you're not super interested in.
Okay, great, thank you. Sereen, what is, I don't know if you want to share one thing or more than one in terms of your experience in this transition. What would you have wanted to know before you've pursued your, whether it's your undergrad or graduate study? What was the one piece of information or one piece of knowledge or, you know, area that you were not very familiar with? It could be related to your academics, or it could be related to living in the US. What is something that you would want to share with this group that you would like them to know, so that they don't fall into maybe a trap, or the issues that you, or the challenges that you had because you didn't know or not aware of certain aspects of life in the US?
Yeah, one thing that I wish I was more aware of is basically, if you were qualified to make it somewhere, then you are more than qualified to succeed in it. If people did see, if like the academic department that accepted you, whether for undergrad or for graduate studies, did see potential in you, then like you better take this, basically this investment that they put in you, and basically honor it, give it your all. At the end of the day, I basically came into undergrad having done all of my coursework in Arabic. I was doing math from left to right, like the Arabic way, my entire life. And suddenly, like overnight, I had to switch from right to left, and no one was going through it at the same time. But then like later on, I just realized that with enough work, with enough dedication, if you spend the time, you always get your results. I came in as someone with less experience than all of my peers, but just the fact that I always asked questions, I always went out of my way to get help. I always basically put in all my effort to understand topics. And I also followed my passion. That's something I would always tell people to do. Oh, like a lot of people were telling me, oh, you should go into entrepreneurship and computer science because it is the most high paying field right now. And I did try that. I was miserable. So yeah, I would say basically find the things you really like, and they will guide you towards your goals and success.
Great, thank you. Someone, Dan is asking about the two-year scholarship that I mentioned. It's the Fulbright student scholarship program. And that is that program is supported and sponsored by the Department of State through the American Embassy here in Jerusalem. And it's a two-year program. And we announce the cycle, the application cycle every year. And it's usually during the end of January, early February that it is announced. And so now that you're on our emailing list, we will definitely share the Fulbright scholarship application cycle for next year, so that you could learn more about it by reviewing information on the West Bank, on the Emmett East website, or the State Department website as well. And so that's a two-year program, and it is fully paid. It's a J1 visa, and it's an exchange program. And so once you're accepted to the program, then the Emmett East Scholarship Committee and the Fulbright Committee works with those who are accepted to apply to universities in the US. It is a process, and so it's important for you to learn the timeline for that process and the requirements. And so it's not too late to check it out and learn the basic information, and also some of the requirements that you will be asked to make sure that you submit in terms of documentation. So that is the Fulbright program, and you can definitely email us, and we can put you in contact with the department that administers the program here at Emmett East. There's a question about, again, about publications and what challenges you face when in the publication process. I don't know if you're at that stage yet, Sereen.
It is kind of a coincidence. I just got to that stage, which is pretty early. You don't really have to publish your first year. I was kind of lucky. I was accepted to 2 labs at the University of Pennsylvania. Another reason why I decided to go there. I had 2 options. I heard great things about the professors, not just the research, but also as personalities. So your first question, Mataz, is your supervisor helping you guys for publishing over there? I was given a project to work on at the very beginning, and people usually get projects that are very simple in nature, very low stakes. They usually ditch them as soon as they join a lab and basically do something they like better. My project surprisingly ended up with like really good results. So my advisor casually just mentioned that we could just publish them. So I started pretty early. I have the results. I'm gonna present them at a conference actually in like a week and a half, if COVID doesn't cancel it. So I wouldn't have thought that this is worth publishing. I'm new at the end of the day. I'm still navigating my way around. It also always comes down to finding the right person, someone who really like goes out of their way to help you. Your supervisor is applying for big grants, participating in faculty meetings. So basically, like you need to find the good people who will actually think, oh, like this first year student who did this really simple thing, but it's still worth sharing with the world. So that was really helpful. It pushes you, it gives you like a confidence check, first of all, and it also like gives you like a very early practice towards publication writing. As for the challenges, there's a lot of challenges. Academia in general and upper basically higher education can get problematic. In general, people there are very friendly. They always want to see you succeed, but there's always going to be a lot of competition. Maybe it is because I'm in an Ivy League where people are always the best of the best. They want to be the best of the best. Basically, like as much as it's bad to like face these challenges, I would always say like it builds character. You come out of it with a lot of lessons. There's basically always at every stage in life, there's always going to be challenges. The ones in graduate studies are basically going to come down to you and your determination towards things. My other challenge was I was basically doing skills and learning things in lab that I have never done before. Everyone around me in the lab was already doing their work, and I just felt bad coming up to people and like asking them to teach me this one skill or the other. So I started watching what other people were doing for themselves, like experiments, and just asking if I could shadow them. And shadowing once or twice helped me basically teach myself what I'm doing. And it also helped me like troubleshoot things. And I basically went into tangents with my own experiments, made up my own things. Basically, like you can like, as the more flexible you make yourself, the better you get at encountering these challenges. Is it possible to access data for your research? Depending on what kind of research you do, some people will get data that's already been collected. For me, I have to make the experiment. It starts basically with me ordering a cow joint or like sacrificing one of the animals we work on. We work on a lot of animals. We work on cows, sheep, goats, pigs, rats, and mice. So it basically starts with me working with these animals, getting cells from them, and basically doing experiments, coming up with a material and putting it in the animal. So it depends on what kind of research you're doing. That's basically what it is. Sometimes you repeat experiments, but for the most part, like accessing data, depending on who you're asking, a lot of people will just share the results with you if you look at a paper and you find it interesting. What about analysis part? Who can do it for your research? Analysis depends on, basically I read a lot of papers with my advisor and I saw how people present their results, and that also helped me basically learn how to show one thing or another. There's a lot of academic applications that are like very widely known. I didn't know about them before I went into graduate school, but I found out about like this application that will basically take in like 200 images of cells and do all the work for you, find the areas and everything. Back in undergrad, I was doing that work by hand. And let me tell you, it takes like 30 to 40 hours a week. But that application did it for me in like 5 minutes. So your advisor will know what's best and what can help you with your analyses. It's like you'll always find that kind of support, and don't apologize for asking. This is what the session is for.
And I think a segue to concluding our very engaging session with you and with the audience, Sereen, is really an important takeaway is don't be afraid to ask questions. You'll get answers, and you'll get people to, if they don't have the answer, provide you with the resources to get your questions answered. And I think that's a very important advantage to studying in the U.S. There, you will have support at the various levels of your education, and you will have your questions answered and have that support that you need to succeed in whatever area of study that you are planning for. So with that, Sereen, I really do want to thank you so much for your time. And we're very, very proud of you. And we look forward to having future sessions with you and others who are currently studying in the US, and hopefully having the attendees today also join us for future sessions. Thank you again, Sereen. Thank you, Marwa. And thank you everyone for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, or morning. And if you're in Ramallah and it's snowing, let's hope we have a snow day tomorrow, maybe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.